Hello, hello. How is it going? You just heard from me, but I'm back with this panel full of stars, and I'm going to start my spiel right here. This event today is brought to you by the team at Modern Sales Pros. For those of you not familiar with MSP, we are the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and sales enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros. Our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer the toughest revenue questions out there. That's why we have this panel full of stars in here because they can answer everything that you need to know. If you're not a member yet, you are missing out, but we will invite you to join us right after the summit. And a great thing about MSP is that we do not work alone. We have amazing sponsors, and you see them here in this slide. Big thanks to them for making RevEx Fest happen. And to learn more about these innovative companies, click on the Sponsors Booth tab at the top of this event page. And while you're there, you can also check the full agenda of events. If you miss anything, there's a link for the recordings in the chat right now. You can check all the recordings from the 2 days before and check the events coming up. But for right now, let's focus on this session. I'm going to do some housekeeping notes, and then I'm going to pass it to Majon. She will be our moderator for today. She will introduce herself and then introduce the panelists, and then we can kick this conversation. So as far as housekeeping goes, just use GoCast. GoCast is fantastic. You have your chat in there. You can do some networking. You can send your questions. You can send your LinkedIn for people to connect with you, make friends, and make like connections, right? We're here to do business too. Ask questions and check out our speakers and sponsors booth at the top of the events page. You might find gifts and ungated resources right there. And that's enough for me. I am going to pass it to Majon. Majon, you can take it from here. I'm going off stage, and then once you're done, you can invite me back, and I'll do some outro.
That sounds great, Eduardo. Thank you so much. All right, so I am so excited to be here on this panel today. I am just in awe of the speakers that we have here, and this topic is so top of mind for Atrium right now. I am super stoked to be here and to learn from these amazing panelists and to our community that has joined us here today. So my name is Majon Phillips, and I am the manager of the implementation team at Atrium. I've been in this role for about 1.5 years, and it's been really great working with hundreds of sales organizations and helping everybody be more data driven at Atrium. And I am going to go ahead and pass the mic to David to introduce himself.
Thank you, Majon. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you to Modern Sales Pros for having us on this panel. My name is David Singh. I'm the VP of Sales at Scratchpad. We are the revenue team workspace for selling teams. I've spent the last 15 years as a sales leader helping orgs move upstream to enterprise selling. So I'm looking forward to the session today and the great conversation we're going to have.
Fantastic. All right. Thanks, David. And Scott.
Thank you. Scott Barton. I'm with Vericent, and my career has been focused on Salesforce effectiveness. I've worked as both a seller, a sales leader, and a consultant. And Vericent's mission is to help revenue and sales leaders optimize their go-to-market approach through software.
Awesome. Fascinating. Thank you. And then Andrew?
Yeah, thanks for having us. Super excited to be here today. So Andrew Bothwell leads sales at Speckit, go-to-market teams. Speckit is a just-in-time learning platform. We work with a lot of enterprise selling organizations to help provide that real-time enablement and learning inside the tools that companies work in today. I've been in SaaS for 20 plus years now. Crazy to think it's been that long, but also been working with great organizations scaling teams through SMB all the way up through enterprise at companies like Zendesk, TalkDesk, WalkMe, and now Speckit. So great to be here and great to be on this panel with everybody else.
All right, Andrew, I'm expecting you to spill the tea on some of that moving up market stories that you have in your pocket for us today. And then Annalise. I think you're muted, Annalise.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, and thank you for having us. Annalise Hussman, I lead the enterprise growth team here at Gong. spent the last 3 years at Gong building the enterprise segment and just working with wonderful enterprise customers. And spent my entire career in B2B SaaS sales, helping build and scale teams, similar to Andrew, all the way from the SMB to the enterprise. So really excited about the conversation today.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to hear more about that too. All right, so my first question to get us going here is actually for Scott. I think the thing that's top of mind for everybody whenever they start having this concept of, I'm selling like hundreds of deals a month, wouldn't it be nice if I could just sell a few and make the same amount of profit? But how do you know when your team and your product are ready to move upstream, Scott?
Well, hopefully you've done the marketing research to identify fit and opportunity for your particular offering. And, hopefully you're hearing from customers that are up market that you would be a good fit. But I think ideally a point of transition is when you've got a friend of the firm that represents an enterprise stage client that can help you get in as an early adopter.
Yeah, that's a great point. And talking about that, sort of thinking about what it means for you, your org, and then finding those right fits. Andrew, could you sort of define what that means a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's important. Like every organization is at a different point in time when you start thinking about moving up enterprise. And enterprise should and will mean different things to different organizations where one company, it might be, you might do it based off the company size of ARR. It may be based off employees. So really, like, for example, like, do you go after companies of 5,000 employees or more based off your attachment rate of potential users within that company base, as an example? So I think it's really important because it's really hard if you are doing a lot of transactions and you're selling to maybe companies, I'll just use employee size of, 300 employees, to make that jump to 5,000 overnight. So really defining what that enterprise is and what that motion is going to be as you go up market is super important, because I think one of the key things is you just can't move your selling organization, maybe your BDR and AEs up market. It has to be a company effort. It has to be product marketing, because that messaging that's going to be to enterprise organization who are going to have a lot more buyers involved in the process has to be aligned down to the marketing, but also even down to customer success as well. That like true go-to-market motion, because the way you support an SMB customer is going to be a lot different than an enterprise customer, or maybe even mid-market. And so how do you do that in a way that doesn't cause a lot of friction within the organization, to where you're adding some great logos, but you're not able to support them? And then all of a sudden you have churn risk, and also making decisions at the organization, even from a product standpoint. Just because we have this big logo and a lot of AR, we just can't change our roadmap or make decisions just to support this one customer, because the long tail impact will be much greater and stuff. So again, getting that tight alignment, understanding and defining what it is really critical, and not just defining it in sales, but defining it across the organization at the executive level, so that everybody is going in the same direction.
Yeah, that's really powerful. That's really fascinating. And then I think, Annalise, when we were talking about this before, you were also mentioning a little bit about the push and pull and the dynamics here, trying to move upstream. Would you like to talk to that a little bit as well?
Absolutely. I think what Andrew is walking us through is really how the institution, the organization needs to be ready to support a Fortune 500 or a Fortune 1000 company. In addition to that, what we would want to layer on is, are you also seeing interest from those companies pulling you into that space? Are there early adopters who tend to be maybe tech forward, or in your specific industry, leading in that are all saying, hey, we want this, to pull you up with them? And that way you have a friendly partner as one of those first 1, 2, 10, 15 enterprise customers that you can really build and collaborate with as you're building that motion and that internal structure that's supporting that enterprise footprint inside your organization.
Yeah, fascinating. All right, great. And then David, talk to us a little bit about the mindset that you have to have whenever you're making this judgment call.
Yeah, Majan, great question. I believe it all starts with the mindset of the sales leader. Now, I've been at several early stage companies over the last decade where the initial focus when I joined was on small ACV. And I'm not talking SMB versus enterprise. It was small ACV across the board. whether you're a Fortune 500 prospect or a Series A prospect. And Majan, I see this a lot because organizations believe they need to start small. They don't have the confidence to think big and ask for more. And I was coming into companies on day one asking, why are we charging 15 or 30K when our solution is providing 100x to 1000x that value? So it all starts with mindset. It starts with changing the company mindset across the board, from the CEO to the sellers to the product team. It requires focusing on engaging at the exec level, not the user, not the manager level. It requires focusing on business capabilities, not features, and focusing on value and impact. And if you do that, the results are staggering. A couple companies, I've done this at year one at one company, ACV rose 4x in the first year. At another company, ACV rose 14x in the first year. Same sellers, same product, same target account, same company mission. The only difference was the confidence and the swagger. So my advice is for the sales leaders, come in with that mindset to think big, and the results will follow.
Wow. That's great. Think big. You can do it. Think big, dream big, prep big. Then everything comes into play. I love that. All right. So I'm going to bounce back to Andrew for a little bit. I'm curious to know, how are things sort of changing selling in the enterprise market today compared to years past?
Yeah, great question. I think, well, one, there's two things. One is you just look at the economic conditions today. Things have changed pretty quickly for how you go win some of these deals. And I think we'll talk a little bit about this today. But if you think about like technology, there's a way more SaaS products and tools out there in general. And I think PLG, the product-led growth motion, has really changed the way that enterprise companies and the enterprise sales motion really works today. People are much more risk adverse. There's that ability to try and buy, whether that's a free trial on the company's website, or more importantly, what you're seeing more often is we're going to start within like a department or a subset of users to really make sure before we go spend $1 million or six figures, whatever that is for the enterprise motion in your organization, to make sure that works. And what that has changed to is, previously it's like, we're going to go sell $1 million deal, and then we're going to go pass over to our solution architect team or our onboarding team and get these customers up and running and account management, to now, how do you have tight alignment across the sales and CS organization so that you are continually realizing the value, the ROI that you hopefully built out during your sales cycle to prove the value of the tool that you're selling, to then making sure you have those specific touch points and success metrics of that initial purchase. And from there, you have to be able to continually navigate that organization. Like I talk a lot about like multi-threading, and it's just not you multi-threading. It's how do you bring your CEO, especially if you're a startup or even a larger organization, to help continue to paint that vision in these larger organizations and continue that executive alignment until you reach your full potential. And so I think, again, before you would sell, you'd hand off to account management, they'd go manage the account. Now you're handing over customer success, who should be really focused on driving the success of this initial launch and then continually expanding or getting that strategic expansion, as I like to call. Is like, great, we did this 200. Now, how do we do the 5,000, 10,000 seats now that we've proved this, right? And so again, that continued collaboration across those two teams, I think, is just more critical than ever. And having that go-to-market motion together versus separate can have a massive impact on revenue and how fast you scale and grow. And then measuring it too, right? Because as you scale and grow, almost to David's point, it might be 200 seats today as the land. How do you get to 500 seats at the land? How do you get to 1,000 seats at the land? So continually iterating on both your sales and CS motion to improve both of those.
Yeah, I'm going to lean into that a little bit, because you've brought up the sales and CS motion a couple times, and like the GTM org overall, and making sure that alignment happens at a high level. Of course, we can try to understand what that means, but where have you seen success, like logistically speaking, in getting the different teams within GTM aligned?
I think, well, one piece is like compensation. Like, I'll just jump straight there. Like, people have to have the right types of compensation for the right types of motivation. So having your sales and CS team aligned on the right comp versus competing for comp, I think is one big piece of it. I think understanding the journey of the customer It's not a buyer journey and customer journey. It's the journey of the customer. And that really starts top of the funnel all the way through, because you do still need marketing to educate those customers. And so again, this is my whole point. It's like, it's a truly go-to-market approach. It's marketing, sales, and CS, and then collaborating tightly with CS and mapping out that journey together of what are the touch points for the AEs, what are the touch points for the CS, and also how do you optimize? And I think optimization can come from tools, whether it be your CS tool. Like, the CS tool should not just be for CS. So for example, we use Catalyst. We love Catalyst here at Speckit. We also use tools like Rattle as well, and Salesforce, to give our team the ability to collaborate and know our specific touch points or alerts or whatever, whenever we need to go together. But everybody understands the responsibility of how we should go support that customer, up to product as well. And so I think having that journey discussed and iterating on it, like, you're not trying to get 100% of it right. You're trying to find, get 70% of it right, find some of those gaps of what's working, what's not working. And then again, continue to iterate, because eventually you do want to try to get those, that larger land shouldn't be 200. It should be 500, 1,000. And again, so I think if you have that tight alignment of that journey and really think about those touch points with roles and responsibilities, and I think that is a really important thing. Like, sellers and the go-to-market team success people, they just want to know their responsibilities. If you tell them what they're supposed to do and they can measure against that, you will find greater success and better collaboration across the organization.
Yeah. So when I'm working with sales orgs to sort of take this and go another step, a lot of times what I'll hear on the phone with people selling large enterprise deals is it's like, oh, it's okay that that op is 800 days old. We sell to enterprise, so it's totally fine. Our sales cycle is much, much longer. And I think that I'm learning from people like Andrew and David on this call that that might not necessarily be true. David, would you like to speak a little bit to velocity and time and deals for these larger deal sizes?
Yeah, Majan, absolutely. When I started in enterprise sales 25 years ago, 5 years ago, the legacy mindset was that enterprise meant long, drawn-out sales cycles, and that is just not true. Your buyers, they don't want long and drawn out. If your solution is providing value to them, they want to move quickly. They want to move fast. They want that positive impact to their business. So you need to believe in what I call high-velocity enterprise. That's pure enterprise sales campaign, but moving forward on a daily basis. And this is very possible. In the last two companies, our enterprise sales cycles remain below 90 days. And the reason for that is we took a daily approach to moving deals forward, not a monthly approach, not a weekly approach. And going back to my original point, it all comes down to the mindset of the sales leader. If you set the expectations that an enterprise deal could be 90 days, guess what? Your team will deliver in 90 days. If you set the expectation that an enterprise sales cycle is a year, guess what? Your team will deliver in a year. So as you're moving to enterprise, don't think that you're making that trade-off. Higher deal sizes does not mean longer sales cycles. It just means taking a deeper level of inspection and deeper level into the momentum of deals on a daily basis.
Awesome. Thanks, David. So thinking about that, obviously my next thought's going to be like, okay, we're saying this to the team, but then there needs to be some enablement that's happening as they start trying to figure out how to work with larger orgs. Scott, could you talk to us a little bit about the enablement within the enterprise sales motion?
Yeah, I think it's pretty critical for the sales team to understand where the prospective buyers are on their journey. And that sounds like a catchphrase, but as customers become more dependent on digital assets to understand, the different offerings and the value proposition and how to differentiate, they still need help. And, in most cases, they value human interaction to kind of help them through that process, through that journey. So, whether it's, a BDR or, a more sophisticated sales professional, establishing that contact, being able to meet the prospect where they are and just helping to educate them and guide them through that process creates value pretty early on. So to think that the prospect can rely exclusively on the website and related information, is missing the opportunity.
I love that. Yeah, that's great. So the human element is still important in our days of tech touch society. I think that's really important to note. All right, analysts, I'm going to switch to you for a little bit. I think that we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the climate that we're in right now. Obviously, sales cycles are struggling all over the place, especially in SaaS, but just the economic situation that we're in right now is making a lot of deals more challenging. Could you talk a little bit about how the macroeconomic climate is changing this and how we're being scrutinized in the sales world right now?
Absolutely. I think that anyone listening today would agree that any and all of our deals, whether you're in the SMB or all the way in the enterprise, we are being scrutinized more. I was sharing this recently that, if you're closing $1 million deal now, the process and the evaluation process, especially those last couple miles, feel as though you're being reviewed as a $30 million deal. So I couldn't agree more with David's point that we should still be really focused on daily actions, taking us a step further every single day, driving that sales process down the funnel. But I think we also need to be really having an open and honest conversation with our teams around the new objections that we're hearing from our prospects, because they are afraid of making big purchases in this macroeconomic climate. I think we should be having real conversations around that. It's going to be more of a consensus with our buyer. We talked about multi-threading here a minute ago, but I think now more than ever, multi-threading at the C-suite is critically important to make sure that we are building those champions across the board. And so I think as you think of all these different inputs that the environment is having on us, we really just need to be executing a little bit more perfectly every step down the way. And I think as leaders, it's our opportunity, and it's really our job right now to be rolling up our sleeves and getting in those deals with our teams to make sure we're understanding what's going on and supporting them through this process.
All right. Awesome. I'm going to go a little bit off script for us, just because I'm really curious to understand. I mean, obviously, we're talking about David's mentioning, these deals, if you believe it, can be done in a shorter amount of time. Obviously, that's important. Getting the amount of deals that you need. Have win rates been sinking in orgs that you were seeing and orgs that you've been working with? And is that making changes to this enterprise sales motion? Or is enterprise actually a market that things are maybe a little bit more stable than like SMB and smaller startups?
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. I do think the up market, again, depending on what you're defining your enterprise as, is a bit more stable than smaller companies. I do think regardless, everything is more scrutinized. I wouldn't say necessarily that win rates are shrinking. I think deals are pushing out more common is somewhat what we're seeing, what I'm seeing, but also what I'm hearing from colleagues and peers as well. I think one of the key things to piggyback off Annalise and on this topic, it's, as a leader, no matter what level you are, is being involved in those conversations. And oftentimes it's asking those direct, hard questions. It's the questions that sometimes the reps, I don't want to say are scared to ask, but maybe don't feel comfortable just asking really direct, of just like reconfirming those business problems, reconfirming the time frame, reconfirming the buying process. And I think that's just really critical because beyond just winning, you also need to be able to forecast. And forecasting the enterprise is a lot more lumpy because things can move and shift. And so being able to report up to your board and to your C-suite, I think is really important too. So being able to go in and ask those questions, and to Annalise's point, just scrutinize those deals more yourself and pull in the executive team. How can we think differently in this economic time of not just doing the same motion, but how can I pull in my product leader to have a roadmap conversation, or the CEO to have that vision and get that connection, right? It goes a really long way when you think about like what is happening in the market today.
Awesome. Anybody else have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I can speak to it. I mean, Versant's solution, we focus on sales productivity and ROI. And so that is advantageous, for companies that are experiencing a higher cost of capital, wanting to stay engaged in the market, not wanting to cut back on their sales resources. but to get more out of the resources. So I think some of it depends on the value proposition. But as Andrew said, being adept at elevating those conversations to a higher level buyer, because these things are going to be top of mind for them. So going beyond feature function and really talking about overall business value and how to plan and execute through what could be a recessionary cycle coming up.
I want to add one thing too that I was thinking about as well. Like as you think about this, this economic climate, like you kind of mentioned it, like how do you build pipeline? How do you think about these things as well? Like you have your biggest asset and your biggest champions, which are your customers. They've already bought into the vision and the belief of what you could provide to them. So not only is it protecting revenue, but that is the opportunity to go really focus there and try to double down on how you expand some of that revenue. So, versus where you might have been on a high growth trajectory of net new logos and net new business of, depending on where you're at in the market, 60, 70, 80, whatever that metric is for you, talking about that as an organization too. Like, can we go double down for the 6, 9, maybe 12 months? And can we shift that to 50-50, right? Can we make up some of the revenue that we might have seen in other segments or other sectors or in the enterprise that might take longer with our customers that already have the belief and vision that we've painted and that they've bought into? So again, it's that land and expand model, but now focusing on that. I think that in this current economic environment should be a focus for go-to-market teams as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing too is just making sure that it's not a bottoms up sales motion, but that you're actually hitting the people who are holding the budgets and really making sure that they're accounted for as well. As we're talking about this pain point, David, go for it.
In this tough economic climate, we also have to remember organizations need to deliver. They have their revenue targets. They need to hit their goals. So if you're able to provide the right business value and paint the right picture to the exec team of how you could help them hit their revenue targets, how you could help them achieve their goals for the year, they will purchase. This is the time for really the cream to rise. If you're executing a proper sales cycle, if you're focusing on value, focusing on exec sponsorship, you will get the deals. The money's out there. Companies still need to improve. They still need to execute. They will make the investments.
Yeah, that's a great point. And David, to stay with you, actually, this is obviously the top of mind pain point for everybody across the board. But what are some other pain points that people need to consider whenever they start moving upstream?
Yeah, Majan, great question. I think one of the biggest growing pains when you move to enterprise is having your team adopt and adhere to a repeatable and predictable process. When you're focusing on small deals, you could hide the ugly warts in your sales process. You could hide the ugly warts in your sales organization just based upon the volume that you have. But as you're moving enterprise, you can't hide that lack of process adherence and repeatability anymore. You have fewer deals, you have larger deals. So CRM hygiene is critical. Effective one-on-ones with your manager are critical. Predictable forecasting is critical. And defining the right process and enforcing it and enabling your team to adhere to it is critical. And I'm going to go back to very quickly to the word I've said a couple times already. It's the mindset. It's the mindset of the sales leader that drives all of this forward.
I love it. So if we all leave today, it's one thing that we need to take with us. It's all about the mindset. David's driving it home. Love it. All right. Andrew, do you have something on this as well?
Yeah, I think it's to David's point in the mindset. I like to say, don't abandon ship. Like just because it's not, enterprise deals are going to take longer. Again, they're going to be chunkier. You're going to be learning as you're going up market. Like you have to be dedicated to it. You just can't try it for a quarter, 2 quarters, 3 quarters, and say, oh, this isn't working. Like you have to be dedicated to that motion. And again, measure it, take a look at it, see what's working, what's not working, continue to iterate. But it's not a short journey. It takes time. Again, product marketing, CS sales, like everybody has to build that motion together, and that doesn't happen overnight. So again, just don't abandon ship.
And can I add one more thing as well?
Yeah, please.
I think it's important for us as leaders as well to make sure we're celebrating those small milestones in that journey. Because it's so easy to only focus on the day we close revenue. But I think we should also be celebrating the days we get through a really tough InfoSec process, or we finally get that executive buy-in. So I think that's on us as leaders, again, to celebrate those small wins because they're important.
And celebrate with the people involved in the InfoSec security process that aren't involved on the 180-day cycle, like just getting them to understand that the impact that they have is meaningful as well, or lawyers or whoever else. I totally agree. Emily's great call out.
So our audience has brought up another pain point for us. How do we address prospects' objections when they ask for references if we aren't going after net new customers in a new vertical where the company hasn't yet proven itself?
Mahjong, I could jump in first to answer this. So from my perspective, and this is my perspective, customers ask for references, prospects ask for references when they still have outstanding questions. And the best thing that you could do is don't throw them, to a customer to tell a story yet. Understand what those objections are, answer those objections, and then magically that request for a reference call disappears. What we can't do is leave those outstanding questions, have them fester within the prospect, and then they want to talk to someone who may or may not be able to address it in the right way.
Yeah. I would add one thing. I think like in some of these buying processes, like it's required for the evaluation that they talk to customers, and they might talk to competitors' customers as well. It's finding the same problems that another customer had that they can relate to. So it's not about like necessarily always the industry, the amount of users all the time, but it's, hey, versus, and you have to help them understand that, right? It's educating them, like versus focusing on the industry. How about we focus on a customer that's had the same exact problem and how we help them solve it and the results they had? I think when you can reposition it that way, most customers or prospects will understand that. And again, the question you're going to have to ask yourself, if that's not good enough for them, to David's point, do you really understand, and do they really understand the problem they have and how your organization is going to help them solve that? Because it just means they're not bought in yet.
Yeah. Scott, do you have anything on that?
Yeah, I think you just got to be frank and honest. And I like what Andrew said is that, where you might make an apples to apples comparison, just think differently about it and, focus on your customers that have similar issues to those enterprise clients. And that's, that's what it's about, is solving problems.
Yeah. Annalise?
I think we've covered it, but yes. And I think that at the end of the day, if there's still a push, I think you can start getting creative. Lean on your board. See, you can have them talk to them about why they invested, or just start thinking outside of the box. But I think at the end of the day, it's answer the questions that are underlying that, and then think about where the actual use cases we're trying to apply, and see if we can go outside of their vertical.
Awesome. One more question on all of this. I think the pain points are really striking a nerve with a lot of people. Any thoughts on replying to enterprise RFPs? If it's new for you.
Well, it can be unfortunate, right? Because it signals that you're late to the dance, but it's still an opportunity. And I think if you can, be somewhat agile and effective in working through RFPs, then hopefully you get to a place in the enterprise space where you don't see many of them, because now you're, working a motion, right, where you're ahead of it. Or if one does come out, you can rubber stamp it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Down onto Scott. Oh, I'm sorry. Lisa, go ahead, please.
No, it's quite all right. I started my career actually as the person who had to respond to RFPs at a company called O-Power. So this is really bringing back the old school days of me. I think my thoughts on RFPs, though, is if you didn't help write them, you're already behind the 8 ball. And so I'm happy to respond to an RFP if we helped write it. And I think that's something we should always keep a focus on, is you should be that close to the buying process and the buying center where you can say, yes, this is how I would evaluate our space. Here are the questions to ask. And then you're in a much better spot.
I always say it's a race to the bottom. Like we really don't respond to RFPs, to Annalie's point, unless like we're driving the RFP process, because it's a race to the bottom on costs. It's a race to the bottom on features, to like everything David was saying before, we've all been saying on the panel, like you have to understand the problem we're solving for. Otherwise it's just a feature set and you're never going to get to value. And you're most likely going to waste one of your customers' times because you're going to have to put that in the reference and all this other stuff too. And so unless you're talking to the business and you're focusing on like what the actual problem is, it's a race to the bottom. So all that time and energy spent from your SEO organization, your AEs, maybe pull product marketing in to help with some competitive stuff, but like it's not worth the time.
Exactly. And folks, if you're second or third to the game, redefine the playing field. Go to that business sponsor, because at that point, that RFP is with the low-level operations person who's just asking for answers. Go to the business sponsor, redefine the rules, redefine the playing field, and redefine the criteria that they're looking at to focus on what your solution does best.
Yeah, great answers all around, you guys. Wow, what a panel of experts here. I'm going to come to you anytime I have problems with my enterprise customers moving forward. Guys, help me. All right, so I'm going to shift away from pain points for a moment and talk a little bit about the type of people that you're wanting on your GTM team, how you're hiring those people, how you're ramping those people, and how things sort of change as far as your hire and ramp and training goes for people selling enterprise deals. So Annalise, I'm going to start with you. How is the hybrid world sort of changing things like ramp and team dynamics?
Great question. I think that we're all still, in some ways, figuring it out, right? We went from this overnight being completely remote now into a hybrid role. And I think that one of the things you really need to be focused on if you're still growing and ramping your teams in this new hybrid environment is to take a step back and be thinking about what are the jobs that need to be done, and then mapping that back to the profiles of folks that you're hiring to make sure that you're still hiring for the people that you need today, to make sure the skill sets match with their behavioral and attributes they can provide to the company. So I think that's a big part of it. I think that also it would be remiss of us saying that we are probably feeling a little bit of pain ramping new folks if you're not back in the office yet, or if you're not bringing people together for big enablement sessions that Scott was talking about previously, or big training sessions. A quick personal story. I joined Gong in April of 2020. And so I was the first onboarding class at Gong where we were now fully remote. And that would have been a really scary thing to do, stepping into an organization as a sales leader without having that human contact. And so without having a platform like Gong at my disposal, I also think I would have been in a very tricky spot as well. So I think the summary of this is that we're still evolving. And I think that as we're evolving into this new world of going from remote to hybrid, we just need to be taking a step back on a quarterly basis and saying, do we have the right profiles for the jobs that need to be done? And do we also have the right tools and platforms up and down the chain for us to enable and support our teams effectively? So that's where my head is on that right now.
Yeah, great. Andrew, going to point to you a little bit on this one. When you're looking for the GTM org and types of personas for moving upstream, also dealing with this concept of like hybrid work environments, what types of people are you looking for? And then what's the plan of attack whenever you hire them as far as like ramping time periods and plans?
Yeah, I think when you're looking for people, I think we look for a couple things. And I think the first thing is, to David's point earlier, it's a mindset. Like, do they have the mindset to come into this marketplace and learn and really work hard to go hit metrics, KPIs, and figure out how to go win, right? Because they're still figuring things out as you go up market into the enterprise, and things are continually changing. So definitely mindset. I also think about teams from, I'll use a sports analogy, from like a basketball team. I don't want the same type of person, just a bunch of point guards or a bunch of centers, because eventually you either get your shot blocked or you can't get up and down the court, right? So how do you find people with similar mindsets in different types of backgrounds that could fit well into what you're trying to develop, both in the short term, call it 6 months, but also as you go forward? So you might bring a really senior seller in that has a lot of experience because you want them to get ramped and you know the direction you're heading as an organization. And you might pull somebody up from your bench. And I think your biggest asset are your employees. There are people that are finding success in your organization. Maybe they're down market and they've never sold enterprise. But if you do have the right onboarding and enablement programs in place, you should be able to make both of those sellers successful. And because of those different types of experiences, maybe the person coming up from, call it like the mid-market segment into the enterprise, is going to have a lot of product knowledge where they can support this senior seller, but the senior seller is going to have a lot of knowledge on how to go to market and how to approach some of these conversations that they might be having at a different level for the first time. And that collaboration amongst teams and amongst sellers can have a massive impact on how you scale and you grow. But again, I think having very concise, tight enablement programs and measuring that too, right? You're going to have to continue to iterate because the company, you're going to be evolving as a company, new features, maybe price, whatever might change, right? Change is the only consistent in the organization. So how are people ramping and also measuring that success? And the last piece is not everybody's going to work out. You just have to realize it, right? And so making that decision fast as well has a greater impact for you long-term as well.
Yeah, that's great. So true. David, you going to jump in there?
Yeah, I was going to say great comments from the panel. And one thing I'll share with the audience, don't feel like, as you're making the shift to enterprise, don't feel like you have to necessarily just bring in a brand new team of enterprise sellers. You will be surprised that within your mid-market sellers, there are some incredible folks that have the passion, they have the product knowledge, they have the desire to get into enterprise, and they're going to pick it up like that. Look for those folks that are coachable. Look for the folks that are curious, that have a value orientation, the folks who want to do it, because they're going to be seamless in that transition. And when I look at some of the best enterprise sellers I've had in recent years, Jim, Jonathan, Tyler, they were more from the mid-market space. And with the coaching and with the desire, they were very successful making that switch.
Yeah. And Scott, how about you as far as like the enablement and then bringing people who are used to selling your product, but maybe at a mid-market level compared to enterprise? Or is it better to bring in new sellers who are trained more on the enterprise markets?
Yeah, what I'm hearing from David and Andrew is it's refreshing advice because in my experience, it's more typical to buy the talent, to buy experienced enterprise sellers. And it's very risky. And I think one of the things that is, not thought through is kind of the longer term implications of maybe, slow progress or slow to get traction in that market. So what do you do with somebody that's on a 50-50 pay mix, right? And they're not closing any deals and they're a $300,000 a year resource. So I don't think, you let them go after, 12 or 15 months, nor do you avoid the conversation. You have to have a plan or a contingency plan for if they're not making money, how are you going to keep them whole if you see that they're doing the right things? You've got a little more flexibility with a bench player. They're probably going to cost less. They've already demonstrated that they can be successful in the organization. And I think, in practice, it can be a better model. So it's good to hear that, sales leaders are thinking about that option because, it could be less risky. It is obviously a different sales motion. There's a lot more formality in a big enterprise than what you have in a mid-market company. But, as soon as, these scrappy people that really understand your value proposition can learn to navigate, deal with the formalities of a larger enterprise, then, they're probably going to do pretty well.
Yeah,
I think another incredible.
Go ahead, Annalise. Go ahead.
I think another incredible benefit, going back to one of David's points, of bringing these folks up from the mid-market as well, is they have that mindset that they can probably get through this deal a whole lot faster than a year or 18 months. And we've seen that, I've seen that personally a few times, where we pull up, the rising star from mid-market to bring into the enterprise, and they'll see a deal and they say, I can get through this in 4 months. And they do. And that sets a whole new precedent across the team. So that's also another benefit of bringing those folks up.
I was just going to add one thing to Scott's point. Don't be afraid to pay that rep that's moving up from mid-market to enterprise. And I'm not saying maybe pay the 300,000, but don't cut them short just because it's their first shot. Like, go give them what you're paying your baseline enterprise reps, because they'll go work 10 times harder. And if that 20,000, 40,000 is going to net you an additional 500,000, it's worth it every single time because they feel valued in the organization, they feel respected in the organization, and they're going to go run through a wall for you. So just because it's like, oh, we can save a little bit more money. Yes, you can, right? But part of saving that cost is also they're going to be ramped, they're going to be ready to go, and you're going to see a quicker return on your investment. So don't undercut them, because guess what? As much as we say no, don't talk about comp, they all talk about comp, and they know exactly where people are at. And you don't want them going into that role feeling undervalued, because if they do, you're not going to get the most out of them. Pay them.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, don't have them be distracted on pay.
No.
You know, they should be focused on the business and not, you know, how much money they think they should be making.
Absolutely. And Andrew's point, that loyalty is just will pay off tenfold. Pretty incredible.
Go fight with your CFO and CEO or whoever it is that's going to be pushing back on it. Like, say, like, go have that fight. Like, that's your job, is to do right by your employees. And that's just one of those things where I've done the opposite, right? I've learned in my career, like, oh, well, we can save money here. Like, no, I should have paid them more. And that's like my big thing. It's like, just pay them.
Yep. And it will excite the rest of the selling team. They will see that career path. That mid-market rep will work harder to move to enterprise. That SMB will work harder. That SDR will work harder. So it gives them that nice solid career path that you want from your best, most passionate employees.
I love the excitement and energy on this panel. You guys have such positivity, and it just goes to show like what you've done in your careers and the success that you've seen with the ideas and inspiration that you're giving to everyone else. So thank you guys so much for that. Sort of a last question from me, waiting to see if anyone else from our audience has any other questions for us. But last question for me is, what sort of leading indicators, as we're talking about these people that you're seeing success with that are moving up from SMB mid-market to enterprise, what types of metrics are you sort of seeing the most success in whenever you're working with them? As though, oh, you know, if they're great at multi-threading, you know, that's something that I'm looking for. If they're really good at like reaching out to a lot of different accounts, that's something I'm looking for. What are the types of things that you've seen the most success with and knowing early?
Yeah,
Scott, you
I'll
want to start?
go.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, David, go ahead.
Go ahead, Scott. Sorry.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, you know, shout out to Gong, right? Because it's a really good tool for observing in virtual selling environments how salespeople behave, and you know whether they're kind of steering their behavior in customer calls to behaviors that we know are effective, can make a difference. So discovery, you know, are they really probing to understand the pain and the needs, what's unique about that client, and what their expectations are, what the customer's expectations are for the next call. So it's fairly straightforward to observe and coach people around. And then, the other is really around making, differentiation, very concise, distinct points of differentiation with companies that you should know, that you're competing with.
Yeah, absolutely. David?
Yeah. I hate to use the A word, but I will bring up the A word: activity. And it goes back to mindset. It's not the mindless volume of activity, but purposeful activity. Again, setting that expectation that as we're moving to enterprise, that doesn't mean 1, 2, 3 meetings a week. I still want 10, 15 meetings a week. It doesn't mean progressing stages every month. I want to see stage progressions, each week. So setting the bar, setting the expectation for the activity and the velocity makes a huge difference. And those are some of the leading indicators that I look for.
That's awesome. Annalise, do you have anything on this?
I agree with both Scott and David, but I'd also start making sure from early on, can they attack their book of business and have a clear point of view for their different accounts around how our platform can uniquely help our customers or help their prospects? Because I think that is something that's so important in the enterprise, is to make sure that you can up-level those conversations and really tie to the key strategic initiatives that our prospects or customers are looking to solve for. So I totally agree. It's about activity. It's about having good discovery. But I think you have to balance it out with, can you also come to the table with an executive and really wow them, whether it's being prepared or just having a clear point of view. for how we can help.
It's awesome. All right, Andrew, you want to finish it up, and we'll invite Eduardo back in.
Yeah, I think the last piece to all that is when you think about activity, it's how they're showing up. Like, what questions are they asking? Are they doing, like, same like spec it? Like, are they looking at the right type of information and resources that we know is going to help them on board? Are they coming to those meetings, like as Annalise has pointed out, with like strategic questions, strategic initiatives around their books of business? How are they working with their BDRs? What's the relationship between the BDR in your enterprise AE? Are those metrics as well, looking at those BDR metrics of the person supporting them, are those moving in the right direction as well? I think it will really point you in the direction is like, can this person be successful, and what does success look like as we bring other potential sellers into the business as well? So I think those are just important things, not to like, just activity levels and stuff, but like, how are these sellers showing up? And again, what questions are they asking? Are they asking the right questions as well? Because that should help you understand, are they pointing in the right direction, or do I need to re-level set now before 6-9 months and then it's too late?
Yeah, amazing conversation, guys. This was incredible. I learned so much from you. Such wonderful minds here.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And Majan, you are a great moderator. David, Andrew, Scott, and Annalise, fantastic knowledge. You guys are at the top of your game. That's why you were invited to be here. Thank you so much for your time and for your knowledge. Let me pull up my slides. Audience, stick around. You've been an amazing. I think my favorite thing about MSP is the speakers that we have in our audience, because the audience was also amazing here today. Stick around. We have Riding the Rocket, RevOps in Rapidly Scaling Sales Orgs coming up. That's going to be a great conversation. And again, this panel was recorded, so you will be able to access the recording at the MSP website. So while the panelists and I hang out backstage, the MSP team will make sure that you have the recordings in the website later today. So if you have any questions, let us know, but I will see you in the next panel coming up soon. Panelists, we can go hang out backstage.
Cool. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.